Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful day. We are absolutely thrilled to bring you the most explosive, in-depth analysis of the latest dramatic developments currently unfolding. Get ready to dive deep into the emotional turmoil, the bitter resentments, and the shocking twists that are about to change the lives of your favorite characters forever. The suffocating atmosphere within the sterile walls of the hospital waiting room is thick enough to cut with a knife as Donnie, Nicole, and Vernon sit in agonizing silence. The relentless ticking of the wall clock serves as a torturous reminder of every passing second since Anita was wheeled into the operating theater for the removal of her tumor. What was initially presented as a routine, albeit serious, procedure has now stretched far beyond the anticipated timeframe, plunging the Dupree family into a dark abyss of uncertainty. Donnie paces the linoleum floor, the rhythmic tapping of her shoes echoing the erratic beating of her heart, her mind racing through a myriad of catastrophic scenarios. The sheer lack of communication from the surgical team is a cruel form of psychological warfare, leaving the children entirely in the dark. Nicole remains frozen in a plastic chair, her eyes fixed on the swinging double doors, consumed by a creeping dread that threatens to swallow her whole. The anger bubbling beneath their anxiety is palpable. They are furious at the universe, furious at the medical staff, and increasingly suspicious of the terrifying silence that surrounds their mother's fate. However, the most profound and volatile internal conflict resides within Vernon. He sits slightly apart from his children, his posture rigid, his gaze firmly planted on the floor to avoid the desperate, questioning eyes of Donnie and Nicole. Vernon is a man drowning in a sea of his own making, carrying a devastating secret regarding Anita's medical condition that he has cowardly withheld from his family. The guilt gnawing at his conscience is a physical pain, a sharp twisting in his gut that intensifies with every delayed update from the surgeon. He knows far more about the true nature of Anita's tumor than he has ever admitted, harboring knowledge of complications or perhaps a pre-existing severity that he chose to conceal under the guise of protecting his children. But this protection is merely a fragile illusion, a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable explosion of grief and betrayal. As the delay in the operating room stretches on, Vernon realizes with horrifying clarity that his web of deception is about to unravel. When the truth finally emerges, the wrath of Donnie and Nicole will be absolute. They will not only have to face the potential tragedy of their mother's failing health, but also the staggering betrayal of their father's silence. Vernon is backed into an inescapable corner, fully aware that the impending medical update will detonate a bomb within the Dupree family, destroying the foundation of trust that has held them together. Meanwhile, a completely different kind of storm is brewing far away from the clinical dread of the hospital. Eva has just returned home following her grueling stint in the medical facility, her physical and emotional state incredibly fragile. The sanctuary of her home, a place meant for healing and quiet recovery, is abruptly violated by the arrival of an unexpected and deeply unsettling visitor. The sudden knock on the door shatters the delicate peace Eva and Isaiah have fought so hard to establish. This arrival is no coincidence. It is a calculated intrusion designed to strike Eva at her absolute most vulnerable moment. The visitor is an unwelcome ghost, a harbinger of chaos who carries the heavy weight of Eva's dark, unresolved past. The sheer presence of this individual in her living room is a violent assault on her senses, instantly resurrecting buried traumas and secrets she had desperately hoped were locked away forever. Eva's internal struggle is immediate and terrifying. She is cornered in her own home, forced to confront a reality she is entirely unequipped to handle in her weakened state. The anger flares hot and fast, anger at the visitor for their cruelty, and anger at herself for allowing her past to remain a weapon that can be used against her. Isaiah stands by Eva's side, his protective instincts flaring into a dangerous, primal readiness. Yet, the visitor's arrival plants insidious seeds of doubt within his mind. He senses the profound terror radiating from Eva, a fear that goes far beyond mere surprise. Isaiah is torn in a brutal internal conflict. On one hand, his fierce loyalty and love for Eva demand that he physically remove this threat from their home, shielding her from whatever venom the visitor intends to spew. On the other hand, the heavy, unspoken implications hanging in the air force Isaiah to question everything he thought he knew about the woman he loves. Is he merely a pawn in a larger, more sinister game? The agonizing realization that Eva has kept monumental secrets from him begins to poison his protective resolve. If he chooses to blindly defend her, he risks being dragged down into a treacherous web of lies and deceit that could destroy his own life. The tension in the room is a coiled spring, ready to snap and unleash a torrent of destruction that will test the very limits of their relationship. Isaiah is forced into a corner where every possible choice leads to pain, betrayal, and an irrevocable loss of innocence. In another corner of the city, a quieter, but equally intense psychological battle is taking place between Chelsea and her cousin Cot. The heavy, suffocating weight of Tomas's recent marriage proposal hangs over Cot like a dark cloud, transforming what should be a moment of joyous celebration into a paralyzing trap. Chelsea, stepping into the role of the experienced advisor, begins to dismantle the romantic illusions surrounding the proposal with surgical precision. Chelsea's internal motivations, however, are a complex tangle of genuine concern and deeply ingrained cynicism. Haunted by her own past failures and betrayals, Chelsea projects her unresolved anger and bitterness onto Cot's situation. She subtly manipulates the narrative, highlighting the suffocating expectations and the loss of independence that come with a lifelong commitment. Chelsea is pushing Cot toward rejection, not necessarily because Tomas is unworthy, but because Chelsea herself cannot fathom the vulnerability required to accept such a promise. This subtle manipulation corners Cot, forcing her to question her own desires and the foundation of her relationship with Tomas. Cot is drowning in a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. The beautiful ring offered by Tomas feels less like a symbol of devotion and more like a heavy shackle designed to bind her to a future she is completely unprepared to embrace. She is furious at Tomas for forcing this monumental decision upon her without warning, and furious at Chelsea for stripping away the romance and leaving only cold, terrifying reality. The pressure to provide an answer is a crushing weight on Cot's chest, leaving her breathless and desperate for an escape route. The internal conflict tearing her apart is agonizing. She cares for Tomas, but the sheer terror of losing her autonomy and making a catastrophic mistake paralyzes her. Pushed into this emotional corner by the two people she trusts most, Cot is dangerously close to making a rash, destructive decision born entirely out of fear and resentment rather than love or logic. Simultaneously, the fragile stability of Deanna's life is violently upended by a sudden, jarring encounter with a face from her past. The appearance of an old friend, a figure bearing a striking, terrifying resemblance to the chaotic energy of Doug sends shockwaves through Deanna's entire being. This is not a joyful reunion. It is the resurrection of a nightmare she had fought desperately to bury. The mere sight of this individual triggers a visceral, almost physical reaction in Deanna, flooding her mind with memories of past betrayals, unresolved trauma, and a deep, simmering anger that she has spent years trying to suppress. The psychological impact is devastating. Deanna feels as though the ground has been ripped out from under her, leaving her free-falling back into a dark period of her life she thought she had finally escaped. The resentment she harbors is a toxic force, threatening to poison the new, peaceful existence she has built. She is cornered by her own history, forced to confront the harsh reality that the past is never truly dead. The internal struggle to maintain her composure while a tempest of fury rages inside her is a testament to the profound damage this unexpected return has inflicted upon her psyche. Finally, the cutthroat world of corporate maneuvering becomes the stage for a brutal, calculated betrayal that will shatter alliances and ignite a bitter war. Joey, driven by a toxic cocktail of familial obligation and ruthless ambition, abruptly and unilaterally alters the terms of a critical business agreement with Vanessa. This sudden shift in power is no accident. It is a meticulously planned strike designed to strip Vanessa of her influence and redirect those vital resources to his own sister, Heather. Joey's internal justification is rooted in a twisted sense of loyalty to his bloodline, convincing himself that elevating Heather is a noble endeavor that excuses his treacherous methods. However, beneath the facade of brotherly love lies deep-seated guilt and a cold, calculating desire for absolute control. He knows the magnitude of his betrayal, yet he pushes forward, willing to sacrifice his professional relationship with Vanessa on the altar of his family's success. Vanessa, upon discovering this blatant circumvention of their established agreement, is consumed by a pure, unadulterated fury. The sting of the betrayal cuts through her with the precision of a scalpel, leaving behind a gaping wound of resentment and a thirst for vengeance. She is a woman who prides herself on her sharp analytical mind and her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of business. Yet she has been blindsided by the one person she believed she could trust. The sudden realization that Joey is orchestrating a coup to empower Heather at her expense pushes Vanessa into a dangerous corner. She refuses to be marginalized, refuses to be a sacrificial lamb for Joey's nepotistic agenda. The suspicion that had initially flickered in her mind now blazes into a raging inferno of absolute certainty. Joey is hiding something far more sinister behind this sudden change, and Vanessa is determined to unearth every dirty secret he possesses. The psychological warfare between these former allies has officially commenced. Vanessa, backed against the wall and stripped of her expected power, will unleash her most ruthless, predatory instincts. The boardroom has been transformed into a battlefield, and the ensuing conflict will be a masterclass in manipulation, revenge, and the devastating consequences of broken trust. Every character is now trapped in their own personal hell, forced to navigate a labyrinth of lies, betrayal, and explosive anger that will inevitably lead to a catastrophic breaking point.